And Meryl, if you'll mute everybody except Susan, of course, then we can not have any background noise, which is helpful, or people can mute themselves, whichever you prefer. And tonight, I want to welcome you to the general meeting for Village Laguna. We're really pleased to have Susan Skinner with us, and I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself. But reading some information about her and her parents has been very interesting. Certainly activists that we can admire. And I think we're going to enjoy the presentation. I think it's very important for all of us here in Laguna because we're concerned about the zoning and what may come with the SB 9. And with that, welcome everyone. And I'm going to turn it over to Susan and let her get started. And Meryl, you're going to, I'm sorry, and I should have mentioned, while we're listening, if you have an idea or a question that you'd like to put into the chat, you can do that. Or if you want to wait till the end of the presentation and ask Susan yourself directly, we're welcome to do that, either way that is most comfortable for you. And with that, let's get started because I'm really anxious to hear about this initiative.
Oh, sorry. Susan, you're muted.
Oh, yep. Susan, you got to unmute yourself.
Mute. There we go.
There
How's
you
that?
are.
Okay. And then Meryl, you're going to show the slides.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just might add to the intro that Anne gave that Susan has been really our role model in how to translate community activism into a tangible ballot initiative and to engage the community, not only in developing the ballot initiative, but also helping to communicate it and market it and be strategic about how it's introduced in the community. So for that, Susan, I want to thank you very much.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I mean, one of the reasons that I am very, very interested in Laguna is that I plan to actually retire to Laguna. So now I've lost, when you did that, I lost my talk here. So here it is. Okay, now I found it. So by way of background, as you guys have mentioned, I've been an activist in Newport Beach for many years, but I do own property in Laguna Beach, which my great uncle built in 1960, and I intend to eventually retire. So I am very interested in the path that Laguna Beach takes with regard to development, which is, and I was delighted to help you guys write the initiative and kind of work on the initiative because it's going to have an impact for years and years to come, assuming that we're able to get it past the voters. So slide 2, let's go to the next slide. So let me just begin by saying that there's been a need for more housing for as long as I can remember, and especially more affordable housing. And there's just simply not enough room for everybody who wants to live in California, and especially in coastal California. There has been, and there always will be, pressure from developers to build, and it is really hard for the little guy to win against those who have the money and influence without having tools to level the playing field. So for years, the culture of Laguna Beach has been to resist major development, which is why Laguna currently looks like Newport Beach used to look when I was a kid. But unfortunately, both the current Laguna Beach City Council as well as the state legislature both currently appear to be heavily influenced by big developer money, and that political landscape is changing rapidly. So next slide. In past years, almost all land use decisions were made by the local government. The state mandated a certain degree of housing growth through the regional housing needs assessment requirements, and those were assigned every 8 years, but they were manageable, and the state did not seek to micromanage housing requirements. At the same time, Village Laguna was very successful in maintaining a culture that appreciated the charm and the character of Laguna Beach, and this was reflected in past city councils who managed development with a light hand. Next slide. However, that was then, and times have changed. Liberate Laguna, funded by major developers, elected city council members who appear to be very sympathetic to large developments that will potentially and collectively change the character of Laguna Beach. And at the same time, the state legislature has taken a very aggressive stance regarding housing in California. The regional housing need assessment requirements have mandated, and I'm putting quote, only 393 new homes for Laguna, which might sound like a lot to squeeze into this town, but it is minuscule compared to the 23,555 homes required for Irvine, or the 13,337 homes that Huntington Beach must build. This mandate from the state is going to radically change the environment of Orange County once it is fully built out. In addition, the state legislature has taken over many of the land use decisions that used to be made by city councils. Next slide. The worst example of this is SB 9, which effectively eliminates single-family zoning in California, allowing up to 5 units to be built where 1 existed before. This law went into effect on January 1st, 2022, so it is already the law of the land. SB 9 explicitly removes zoning authority from cities by requiring cities to ministerially approve lot splits in single-family neighborhoods. The term ministerial means that the city must rubber stamp any project that fits the requirements of the law, and it has absolutely no authority to prevent or modify such a project. There has been speculation that homeowners associations can apply their CCRs to prevent lot splits under SB 9, but it is very unlikely that this will be the case. There will be court challenges to CCNRs, and it does not take a rocket scientist to realize that a state law will always supersede a homeowners association. If it did not, the communities with CCNRs, more often affluent communities, would be able to avoid the impacts of SB 9, but lower income communities without CCNRs would not. I cannot imagine a court in the land allowing that disparity to stand. Those who hold out hope that the Coastal Act will protect them from SB 9 are also likely to be disappointed. The Coastal Commission routinely approves lot splits, and the law indicates the Coastal Commission can only block an SB 9 split if it applies the standards used for all other development requests. In other words, don't hold your breath. It is worthwhile pointing out that SB 9 does not mention affordable housing anywhere in the law. SB 9 is, in my opinion, a gift to developers. Next slide, please. So the rush to subdivide lots has already begun. On Zillow, this is a Santa Ana lot that has already begun the process. And notice that the description of the homes to be built on this SB 9 split describe high-end custom homes without an affordable component in sight. Next slide. So what exactly does SB 9 do? As mentioned previously, allows development by right. That term means that the law is granting an absolute right for the homeowner to develop their property within the restrictions of the law. So we should be on 7. I think.
Sorry.
There you are. That's okay. Restrictions of the law. So almost any residentially zoned R1 lot can be subdivided and 2 units built on each new lot. The city cannot stop an SB 9 split from occurring, although they can set minor development standards. The law specifically states that these developmental standards cannot impede an SB 9 development. The city can prohibit an additional ADU or junior ADU unit from being built, but an astute developer will simply build an ADU on the corner of the lot, also permitted by right from an earlier law, and then proceed to the lot split. So here's an interesting tidbit. So we had this posted on Nextdoor in Newport Beach, and there maybe even in Laguna. And there were all these people that said, hey, this can only occur because the property owner is going to live in the property for 3 years after the split. And the authors of the bill, they made a huge show of saying that this is going to prevent developers from buying up land and subdividing it because only homeowners can make the split. But the law only says that the current owner must make an attestation that they will live on the property, but it has absolutely no penalties if that does not occur. So guess how many lot splits this is actually going to stop. So next slide. Excuse me. There are a few restrictions to SB 9, many of which will not apply to Laguna. You cannot do a lot split on units that are subject to rent control or units that use the Ellis Act to evict tenants within the last 15 years. You cannot do a lot split in a historic district, which might apply to a few properties in Laguna, in a hazardous waste site, or on land that is dedicated for conservation or within a fire hazard zone. So that last one might sound like Laguna would fall into that category, but it turns out it only applies if the fire hazard is so great that no residential development will be allowed to be built. So in that circumstance, you can't do a lot split either. The restriction that will most commonly be applied within Laguna is that you cannot do a lot split on a rental property that has been rented in the last 3 years. However, most urban single-family homes are going to fall under the purview of SB 9. Next slide. So SB 9 allows any lot bigger than 2,400 square feet to be divided. And so for a size perspective, most of the lots on Balboa Island in Newport Beach are 2,600 square feet. So just envision that. Each of those lots could have 5 new dwellings built on them. Each of the lots created by the lot split can have 2 dwellings, duplexes, on each lot. And then as mentioned, an astute developer can put an ADU on the lot before the split for a 5th dwelling. Next slide, please. So does anybody listening think that parking in Laguna Beach is a wee bit of a problem? Raise your hand. Consider that SB 9 mandates that cities can only require 1 on-site parking spot for each new dwelling and no on-site parking for any ADU or junior ADU. It gets worse. If a project is within 1/2 mile of a quote high quality transit corridor, unquote, or a major transit stop, no on-site parking is allowed to be required. PCH is not currently a high quality transit corridor. That has to be buses every 15 minutes and the peak hours. And I couldn't find anything that said that it actually came that fast. But the downtown bus station is a transit center. So within 1/2 mile of the downtown bus station, the law will not allow the city of Laguna Beach to require any parking whatsoever. So here's the other piece that's interesting, is the law also states that if there is a car share vehicle within 1 block of a parcel, no on-site parking can be required. So now, if I were a developer, I would arrange for a car share vehicle to be within that 1 block radius, at least until the buildings are completed. And then if I can think of that, somebody else will as well. So there are loopholes that you can drive a mock truck through on the parking aspect of this. Next slide, please. The state is convinced that single-family zoning must be eliminated, and SB 9 is one of multiple laws passed in the last few years that attacks local control. As an example, there is another law that does not allow a homeowner to remove housing units from a property. So if somebody buys a duplex, they cannot tear that down to build a single-family home. SB 10 is another recently passed law that pushes high-density housing, although it does cede control to the city councils. Next slide. So SB 10 allows a city council to rezone property for up to 10 dwelling units per parcel within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop, such as the downtown bus station. The city can choose to exempt the project from CEQA, that's the California Environmental Quality Act, and can override any land use initiative in the process if 2/3 of the city council votes to do so. The expectation is that most of these buildings will be mid-rise buildings, especially since there is no limit on the square footage of these units being built. So this SB 10 basically says that in Laguna Beach, within 1/2 mile of the bus station, you can build a 10-unit apartment building pretty much as big as you want it to be, as I interpret that. Next slide. So what can we do to counter this legislative overreach? And that's where our Neighborhood Voices comes in. It's a group that plans to put a statewide initiative on the ballot in November 2024 that will prohibit the state from mandating zoning laws for cities and counties. So in its current form, it simply states that Sacramento cannot dictate zoning laws, with the exception of the Coastal Act, and to situate major infrastructure such as power plants, etc. And because this will be a constitutional amendment, it supersedes any state law that can be passed by Sacramento, meaning that Sacramento must abide by its requirements. And you may have actually heard of this already because our Neighborhood Voices began collecting signatures for the current iteration of the initiative. It's the Tripartisan Land Use Initiative, and they started in late November 2021, but they underestimated the difficulty of getting a statewide initiative on the ballot using only volunteers. Interestingly enough, I had the opportunity to talk with some of the organizers, and they were also stymied by dirty tricks from Sacramento, who quietly told political operatives in California that if they worked with the organizers of the initiative, they would be blackballed for future work in California. I was told that the organizers, that they could not get any significant press, positive or negative, from major papers regarding the details of the initiative. And I know that I wrote a number of letters to the editor regarding it that were not published, which, the LA Times publishes only a few, but there was just nothing about it in the paper. So they announced about a week ago that they were going to pause the effort with the intent of strengthening their volunteer organizing, raising money and restarting the process with a combination of paid and volunteer signature gathering, likely in the summer of 2022. And I'm expecting that they will take advantage of the pause to kind of look at what the opponent's arguments have been. And that's going to allow them to craft a tighter initiative. And so, for example, there were concerns that were raised by opponents that the initiative as it was written might have negated the CEQA laws. And so I think that what they'll do is they'll just put a line in there that basically says, you know, this exempts the Coastal Act and it exempts CEQA and whatever else they feel they need to put in there, because the whole goal of this initiative is to basically restore local control for zoning purposes to local, you know, agencies, cities and counties. So for those of you who have spent some time collecting signatures, let me just say that although it is frustrating to have collected signatures that will now not be used, I really, really feel that this pause substantially increases the chances that this initiative will make it on the ballot. So it's, you know, it is hard to have done that work, and I've done it, and not have it be used, but I think it's the right choice. So now we should be on slide 15. I think I might have missed one, sorry. So what can the average Joe do to ensure that the statewide initiative gets on the ballot? So the two things that are needed most are volunteers and money. So I ask people, consider what life is going to be like if SB 9 and its sister laws are allowed to stand, and what will happen with the laws that are certain to follow. I personally enjoy being in a single family neighborhood, and I appreciate zoning laws that ensure that my neighborhood does not endure unsustainable intensification. Remember, SB 9 doesn't make any infrastructure changes. So water, electricity, sewers, however much gets built, that, you know, that infrastructure just has to deal with that. I might never experience the effects of SB 9 near me, but if a developer decides that my neighborhood is desirable for lot splits and duplexes, there is not a thing I can do about it. So if you all agree that these laws are legislative overreach, please volunteer and please donate. Both can be done at ourneighborhoodvoices.com. Now, I personally find that hard to remember. Is it Neighborhood Voice? Is it Neighborhood Voices? I have a hard time remembering it. So if it's easier, you can start at my website, which is stopsb9oc.com. Excuse me. And there are links to take you to the statewide site. So I would also ask that Village Laguna consider making a commitment to collecting signatures for the statewide initiative once it comes back online. And although the reboot of the initiative will involve both paid and volunteer signature gatherers, the more signatures that can be obtained through the use of volunteers, the more the money raised can be used once the initiative qualifies. And just like every other grassroots attempt to modify overdevelopment, there will be enormous sums of money that are poured into the effort to block this initiative at the ballot box in November 2024. So next slide. Now we go to the local level. So on a local level, the Laguna Beach Initiative has qualified for the ballot and will be voted on in November 2022. Woohoo! To those who wish for a way to level the playing field and give residents a voice in the city development decisions, this is it. This initiative addresses commercial development. The only residential component that is called out is for apartment buildings of 22,000 square feet or larger, which is likely to be a pretty rare occurrence. And the intent is to allow appropriate development without losing the character of Laguna. It is only applicable to buildings along Laguna Canyon Road and PCH, and so it has a limited reach. And under the initiative, combining multiple small lots to create much bigger lots/buildings will require a vote. It sets cumulative limits so that new development can only add 800 new traffic trips daily, or 88,000 square feet of new development within a 1/2 mile radius within an 8-year time span. In other words, if two developments are 3/4 of a mile away, the cumulative limits won't affect each other. If developments are built 9 years apart, the impact of the first development won't affect the second development. The intent is to slow intensification of development to a reasonable level. And honestly, these limits are pretty loose limits. I mean, I really have to say that. Next slide. A significant part of the initiative is locking in existing standards so that future city councils can't change them without a vote of the people. Right now, every zoning standard in the city could be changed if 3 council members vote to do so. It would only take one rogue city council to undo all the standards in the city. And once that's done, it's a very hard thing to put the genie back in the bottle. The initiative locks in pre-existing commercial height limits. It addresses the issue of creating adequate parking by requiring that in lieu fees actually reflect 80% of the cost of offsite parking. And that means that it isn't the taxpayers who will end up footing most of the bill for new parking options, but the businesses who require the parking. And I'm just going to lob a ball to Peter Blake and say that no, most people visiting the downtown are not using Uber to get there. So, geez. All of these limits can be exceeded with a vote of the people. So if there are enough benefits for the residents included in a proposed project would be approved. So you guys know about this, but if you would like to help pass this initiative or you just want to learn more about it, go to lagunaresidentsfirst.org and sign up. If this election is like the slow growth election we had in Newport Beach in 2000, there will be huge sums of money available to the opposition and substantial misinformation about the initiative that's put out there. So next slide. So let me take a moment to share the experience in Newport Beach with our slow growth initiative, Greenlight Initiative. And I was very involved with collecting signatures, organizing. You know, I had my hands and my feet were deep into that initiative when it was going through in the year 2000. Greenlight is actually more restrictive than the Laguna Initiative because it addresses both residential and commercial growth, and the limits on growth are tighter. We were told that the economy would die, that businesses would leave, that we would be inundated with green light elections, and that even a house remodel would require an election. In the end, none of that occurred. We've had a grand total of 3 green light elections in 22 years, and there is no visible economic impact in Newport Beach. Developers simply design projects to stay within the boundaries set by Greenlight. Turns out that they can read, they know how to do that. There's plenty of development and redevelopment that occurs within Newport. But what Greenlight did is prevent Newport from looking like Marina del Rey. And with any luck, the Laguna Initiative will prevent Laguna from looking like Newport does now. Next slide. So the time to act is now. We have an opportunity to make a real difference in our city and in our state. And if we fail, it is unlikely we will have another opportunity to make this degree of difference anytime soon. Educate your friends and your neighbors, volunteer to help, donate, write letters to the editor. Grassroots communications, and I want to practically say this twice. Grassroots communications supersede any paid consultant communication that the opposition can generate. So when your neighbor tells you this is a good thing to vote for, there is almost nothing that the paid consultants can say that will change your your vote, I'm sorry. So grassroots communication, neighbor telling neighbor, friend telling friend, this is a good thing to do. It is the most powerful thing that we have. That's the most powerful tool we have approaching this election. So act now. Jane Goodell said, what you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. And with that, I'll say thank you for letting me present to you tonight.
Wow. Very good.
Thank you.
Wow, so much information.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it is a lot of information. It is true.
It is, but it's so interesting. Meryl, did we get, do you want to take this off and get us back to members?
Yes, I'll do that. And in the meantime, I have a question. You mentioned the blackballing of communication and marketing professionals. I thought that was illegal. Isn't it restraint of trade to make that kind of threat?
So that's why I think you would say that it probably occurred fairly quietly. So I had a conversation with one of the organizers, high-level organizers, just before they made the decision to make the pause. And that's what he said to me. He said, we have not been able to find consultants. We have not been able to, do direct marketing and such, because nobody will work with us because they've been told that, if they work with us, that they will get blackballed. How do you prove that? How do you, if it's said verbally, how do you prove it? So I said to them, you know what, go to, the direct marketing piece that can be done anywhere. You can, so the consulting probably is the same in Washington State, it is in California. Go outside of their sphere of influence and see if you can find somebody that will work with you, because in collecting signatures, I have never had an initiative where 50% of the people would sign my initiative right away. I went to the farmers market in Newport Beach, and it was just boom, 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 boom. We got 100 signatures in about 2.5 hours, which if anybody that collected signatures for the Laguna initiative knows that's super fast to get signatures. So the will of the people is out there. It's communicating it. And you never saw anything in the LA Times. And that's what they said, is they weren't going to publish anything. They couldn't get editorials, they couldn't get letters, they couldn't get anything. So it has to get approached in a different way. And I think they're going to do that. So I actually think this is going to get it on the ballot. I think it's going to make a big difference. So that's a long answer to your short question.
Well, I also too, there was a question around, please define car share vehicle.
So a car share vehicle, it appears to be the kind of thing where, you're part of a club and you sign up for a car. So they, like they do it in San Francisco and New York and stuff like that, where there's you've got 100 people or however many 1,000 people that you sign up and you leave your credit card, and then you're actually buying time on a car. So you would go online and see where the cars are located, and you would register that you want to have it from 10 to 12 on a Saturday, and then you would go pick up the car and then drop it off wherever it was supposed to be dropped off. So that's my understanding of what it is. I did not look for an actual definition of it. I did look for definitions of the high level transportation corridors and the bus transit, but that's my understanding of what it's supposed to be.
Thank you. Other questions, and you can ask them directly, or if you prefer, you can also write them in the comments section.
And if they go in the comment section, I don't see that on my.
I will. I can.
Okay,
I can repeat them
because I'm a computer idiot. So there you go.
That's okay. Well, I do have another question.
Sure.
I guess it's a question. My wife and I like going to Newport Beach, and we walk I think we call them the flower streets.
Yes.
In CDM, and then there's a park nearby with a trail and stuff, and it's really nice. And we were talking with one of the owners of this wonderful little cottage, and on each side, is huge mansions, concrete, glass, granite kind of mansions. And he was lamenting the fact that, they feel like they're really losing that neighborhood there.
And there's been some talk about trying to put some ordinances in to try to preserve those smaller cottages. So within Newport Beach, we have what's called FAR. So it's Florida Area Ratio. So the amount of property you can build is based on the size of the lot. And they don't have restrictions on second floors and, so you can build those little McMansions and stuff them in there based on the FAR. And I don't know if Laguna does it the same way, but you're exactly right. Because again, when I go back to when I was a little kid growing up, Laguna and Newport Beach looked the same when I was a little kid. And what's happened is that the city councils in Newport Beach have been consistently more pro-development than the city councils in Laguna Beach. And you see the difference. They look very different now.
Yeah, I'd also might add that for 51 years, Laguna Beach has had Village Laguna.
And that makes a huge difference. So we ended up, when we did Greenlight, there was almost immediately, there was an election and it went down in flames. And after that, maybe a few years after that, I guess maybe it's actually the second election that went down in flames. Developers actually started coming to us to make sure that we would not be opposing the development that they did, so that it would fit within, not just within Greenlight, but within what SPAWN, which is Stop Polluting Our Newport, and Line in the Sand, which is the political arm of SPAWN, kind of saw as being, being acceptable, character, keeping the charm, and if you can keep the charm and character of Newport anymore, but more or less trying to do that. And it made us real players. So Greenlight made us real players on that development stage. And I think that's what this initiative has the ability to do. It gives residents a voice. It's not, you don't just have to convince 5 members of the city council, you have to convince 5 members of the city council and 50% plus 1 of the people that are going to vote that this is what needs to be done. So.
See, Jacob has his hand up. Jacob, did you have a question?
Yes. First of all, thank you for that very informative presentation. Is the syllabus that you were showing there, is that available in any way to kind of go back on to see it if we?
So certainly the slides, and then I was actually also have a Word document as well that I could share with you guys. that had a little bit more detail in it as well. So, sure. Yeah, you could definitely.
Okay, I'll appreciate that. And the size of the lot that what is the minimum size of the lot? Is it 2,400?
It's 2,400 for a lot split. And so, as I say, in comparison, I show that I use Balboa Island because most people know kind of the approximate lot size in Balboa Island. But Balboa Island, almost all lots on Balboa Island are 2,600 square feet. So you can have a smaller lot size than Balboa Island, divide it into two, and put 5 dwelling units on that. That's a lot. That's a high.
Well, so that brings up to the extent that the municipalities are able to enforce setbacks. 2,400 square feet is not a lot of, once you start chopping off a front and rear setbacks, side setbacks, you've got almost nothing there. So I wonder, pardon me, but my question would be, realistically, in Laguna, how many lots would be eligible to do this? Because we're other than areas where they're top of the world and so on, which were developed later, how many properties would be realistically eligible to do that kind of split?
So I went on Zillow and I didn't look as specifically at the square footage of many lots, but I kind of got an idea on Zillow because it kind of outlines the lot. Just doing an overview, and it actually looked like there are many, many lots in Laguna that would qualify. 2,400 square feet is very small. And to just address what you're talking about, the setbacks, is the law actually defines a 4-foot setback as the maximum that can be required. It was a little bit squishy on that, so don't quote me if you read something different, but there's a point in that law where it basically says that it's a 4-foot setback. If you go to the website that I put together, which is very basic, it's stopsb9oc.com. I actually have links to both SB9 and SB10 if you would like to read the actual law.
Okay,
Thank
we
you.
have another comment here regarding, let's see, some TV stations invite viewers to send important issues for them to cover. Can we do that? I'm sure most people don't get what SB9 is or how it impacts them.
So I'm not quite sure what the question is. Is it to ask them to cover it or to share information?
Yeah, I think it's how to get the word out and maybe using TV or some other methods.
So, I have been also frustrated that the general media does not seem to pick up and run with things like SB9 and SB10. Certainly the LA Times seems to have a very specific bent towards approving SB9 and SB10. So I don't know how much traction you're going to get on most media. I think the Register, which I take the LA Times, has had more information about SB9 and SB10, but where it needs to occur is it needs to occur on Nextdoor and talking about it at grocery stores. And, it needs to be kind of have some of that grassroots feel to it, because I don't think it's going to come from on high. I don't think it's going to come from established news sources, because it's been the law since January already. It's already been in place for 2 months. And how much have you read about it? Not very much.
Yeah. Well, do you think affordable housing was purposefully omitted from SB9 and SB10? And do you think state mandated affordable housing will be the next step, putting it into existing single family neighborhoods?
Well, and that's really interesting, because I think all of us agree that there needs to be affordable housing. I mean, there just does need to be affordable housing. But I look at, for example, SB9, and if you set it up that these were, had to be units that were a third of market rate or whatever, you'd have a little bit more justification for it. But if you look at the donations that have come in to Scott Weiner and to Gavin Newsom and Tony Atkins, who are probably the 3 biggest players in all of this, they have a huge amounts of developer donations. And so I guess I'm looking at it as more they've capitulated to money. That's what I think is going on. I don't know. Did that answer the question? Did I get off topic? Sorry.
Wow, capitulated to money. That's never happened.
Has that ever
in politics
happened?
before.
That's right.
I was wondering that since this went, it has been since January, do we have any information about how many lots have been converted? Is there a way to find out how this development is playing out, or is it still the long shot?
So interesting. I tried to actually find that out for this talk and was not able to readily find that out. So I approached the city of Newport Beach because I have a relationship with the people in the planning department. And what I was told is that they have not had any approvals go through, but they have had, how did he phrase it? There's been a significant amount of interest. I think maybe it wasn't significant, but they've had a fair number of inquiries in terms of how to do this. So I'm, and the kind of situation where, I look at, my lovely mother is not going to be here for another 30, 40, 50 years. And so at some point she's got a very large lot in Newport Beach. You can see as time passes and these lots are being ready to be turned over. If I did an SB9 split on her lot, when she doesn't need it anymore, the value of that for me is going to be much, much higher. So I think you're going to find that people that are done with their single family lot and are ready to move on in whatever way, I think we're going to see a lot of this happen. I think money may supersede neighborhood relationships. I don't know. So.
Do you think a lot of these projects could start between now and 2024 when the ballot initiative would be put in place?
I do. I think we're going to see a fair amount of it. And to some extent, that will help to pass the ballot initiative, because when it's a theoretical, this could happen to you, it's a little bit different than when you go on Zillow and they're in Santa Ana, here's a lot already that's being done. And this is what I'm going to suggest to the statewide organizers too, is they get ready to go back again to collecting, is to have people like me, approach the city of Newport Beach, approach the city of Laguna Beach, and find out exactly how many applications have come in. Because, I think if people know that there's been 50 applications in the city of Newport Beach, all of a sudden, that could be your neighborhood next. It gives an urgency to it. So, I think it is going to help to get the initiative passed. So we'll see.
The last question I have here is, during the 1990s drought, cities prohibited new water meters because there was not enough water to serve them. Has any consideration been given to our lack of water resources in serving new residential facilities?
It absolutely has not. So SB9, SB10, there is no mention of water issues. I think you're probably aware with ARENA numbers, the state has mandated an additional 1.3 million new homes in Southern California alone. That's where, when I quoted the 13,000 in Huntington Beach and 23,000 in Irvine, those are homes that are required to be zoned for. And I've actually read the legislation on that. It basically says that that the ARENA numbers take first precedent get first position on water and over everything else. And so no matter what, the ARENA, those dedicated, the ones that the state is saying you have to build, they get first rights of the water. But, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that we're going to run out of water, electricity, roads, we're going to run out of things. And particularly water is not an easy resource to replace. And so, this is actually the argument I've made to our city council at times, is that once you have given permission to build something, you can't take away their water. That water is now in use forever. And so if with climate change, we're not going to have enough water, it just means that all of us aren't going to have the water that we need. And that's a pretty concerning thought for me. So, yeah, I think.
Have you given any thought to how the desalination plant in Huntington Beach might play into this?
So, the desalination plant concerns me from an environmental standpoint. But I honestly, I think at this point, that is going to be our resource for water. And as awful as it is, it becomes a choice: are you going to live in Southern California, or are you going to use desalination? There are countries in the world. Israel does quite a bit of desalination. It's I really hate the idea of having all the little critters just sucked up and destroyed, into that plant. But, we are headed into, I know you guys know this, we are headed into really difficult climate change and very rapidly, so I think we're going to have to start making some really tough choices if we want to continue living in California, and desalination is probably going to be one of them. So.
Well, thank you very much. Meryl, did we have any other questions from the group?
That's it.
I got one.
Oh,
Okay.
Meg.
Meg.
Okay. Is there any discretionary review allowed? I mean, right now our residential development has to go through design review to be sure, it has view equity and other kinds of design guidelines. So is there no discretionary review on these units?
So there's a very mild or minimal discretionary review. I think I saw Tony. Is that Tony Eisman on the line there?
Yes.
Tony, are you on? Okay. So Tony, you probably can speak to this, is that the city councils were able to set pretty minimal standards that had to be in place. And I know I communicated with George about them. So I think Laguna Beach did that. But you cannot, I believe you cannot deny something. So it's, you cannot say that you're blocking a view, that you're too big on the lot. It is really by right, you get 4-foot setbacks and you can kind of put in whatever you want to put in. So that's part of that loss of control, is that they set up this law that there's very, very little discretionary anything that can happen from the city council point of view. Yeah.
Okay, Tony, and then Barbara Metzger. Go ahead, Tony.
Hi, yeah, it is, there's nothing. As far as my impression of the meeting was, there is absolutely nothing other than surprise when somebody wants to put an ADU in the backyard. And I asked the director of community development, could you please just tell the neighbor that it's coming? Could you go out there and show them what it's going to be? It's just a surprise. It's Jack in the Box. It's going to jump up and it'll look right into your living room. It'll do whatever. It is what it is. Now, the sense is that property is so expensive here and ADUs are so invasive to the people that there may not be as many as we anticipated. But for an ADU for someone who's going to be helping a senior citizen, or an ADU for basically visitors, and that, or it may come, but not depending upon who owns the property.
Yeah.
There is a sense that it's not going to be that bad. I never share that kind of optimism.
Well, I
Thank
mean,
you.
I'll speak to it in my neighborhood, because we have a little bit bigger lots in my neighborhood. I think most of our lots are 6,000 to 8,000 square feet in my neighborhood in Newport Beach, and there are quite a few ADUs. So
Really?
yeah, there
Are they respectful of the setbacks and privacy? And
Well, I see them over the fence edge is where I see them, and they look like they're awfully close to the edge of the property, but they seem to be in the back of the backyard. So not so much on the way my neighborhood was built. It was the first neighborhood that Donald Bren built in Newport Beach. Is there's not a lot of side yard, but there's more backyard, and so the ADUs I've seen are mostly in the back of the backyard. So they're not really looking into someone's, somebody's house.
Thank you, Barbara Metzger.
Okay.
Okay.
I keep getting information online on I think it's called Livable California. It's
Yes.
the group that did the statewide opposition to SB 9 and 10. How is your initiative related to that, if at all?
So Livable California is working with our neighborhood voices, and the initiative itself was titled, and again, it's been paused, and so it's going to come back with a new iteration and probably a new name, but it was titled the Tripartisan Land Use Initiative. And Livable California, they've been working hand in hand in terms of getting that to get on the ballot. But it's actually our neighborhood voices is the actual group that were the proponents.
Okay. So it's everybody working together. That's good to know.
Yeah. They were.
And I had one other thought. 2,400 square feet is just a little bit bigger than a lot in Arch Beach Heights. If you think about what it's like up in Molten Meadows, those lots are 2,000 square feet. Yeah. So
Yeah, our-
almost everything in town is bigger than that.
Our lot is 2,500 square feet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one of
Chris?
the that we have in Laguna Beach is this is kind of an aging community. And as we die off, those that inherit the property, there will be more than one, usually there'll be 4 or 5. They are going to be interested in what they can get out of it, whether it's a sale or whether they can build ADUs to have this income stream keep coming. So I think Laguna Beach is facing a serious problem down the pike. And I don't know.
Really agree.
Heidi, come on.
Well, and Chris, you also know that Prop 19 that happened about a year and a half ago,
Yes.
yeah, eliminated. So now you can't inherit, which is actually how I come to own property in Laguna Beach. Is we made that transfer before Prop 19 took effect. But now those, if you didn't do that, you're not going to be able to have your children have Prop 13 tax basis, and who could afford taxes, currently. So yeah. So I think it's a real problem.
It is.
Well, thank you, everyone. This has been
Is there
a
anything
really
about that?
informative meeting. We really appreciate, Susan, you have done such a great job informing us about all of this and frightening us to death. Thank you so much.
So sign up to volunteer. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I know all of us really appreciate it. And we're going to keep in touch and work together because this is a very important issue.
It is.
Jean, I know you had an announcement you would like to make.
And I'm going to bid you all adieu because I had sinus surgery on Friday and now I'm going to go lay down and just relax.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your
All
efforts.
right. Thank
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yes, the Laguna Canyon Conservancy, a week from tonight on March 7th at 7 o'clock, will have its next Zoom meeting. Our speaker will be Green Vision advocate Melanie Schlotterbeck. So look for that Zoom link. If you can't find it, send me an email and I'll send it to you. Be there or be square.
Thank you, Jean. And we're going to turn it over to Mary, our Village Laguna treasurer, and we're going to talk about our budget for the upcoming year.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I've totally capitulated to money. That's all I think about as the treasurer of Village Laguna. And tonight I want to present the budget that our budget committee came up with for 2022 for your approval. So I would ask, can I share screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me do that. No, that's not what I want. Okay, so our budget committee this year consisted of Darylyn Jervin, Berna Rollinger, Janet Biscobi, and myself. And just to let you know about our process, we sat down, and I guess this is what everybody does when they make a budget. We looked back at what we have spent in previous years to kind of help inform projecting what needs we will have for 2022. So I'm looking down here at the expense portion first, and the 3 columns are for 2020, 2021, and the 3rd column over is 2022. So you can see our big ticket budget item for this year is $20,000 for campaign funding. And this is what we have traditionally budgeted over the last several election cycles for a city council election. And the other things are pretty much what we need for our basic operations. Administrative costs are civic contributions. We budgeted $10,000 here for issue response. And then we have our other things like insurance, legal fees, so on and so forth. So we came up with a total projected expenditure this year of $48,500. So That means that in order to balance our budget, we would need to take in that same amount. So going back up to what we project for our income, again, we looked back at what we've made in dues in the last couple of years. So we're expecting at least 22,000 in dues. And that means we need to come up with an additional 18,500 to give us a total income of 40,500. Now you may be asking, wait a second, didn't you say we're spending 48,500? Why are we only looking at an income of 40,500? That's because, again, if you look down at the bottom, we're actually on a 2-year cycle. In non-election years, like last year, this is 2021, we actually took in $8,000 more than we spent in anticipation of the fact that this is an election year, 2022. And in this year, we will be expecting to spend $8,000 more than we take in. So those two numbers together mean that over the 2-year cycle, we will have balanced our budget. So that's kind of what we came up with and where we are. Does anybody have any questions before you're asked to vote approval?
Carol, is anyone raising their hands?
I'm checking. Don't see anybody here.
So could I have a motion to accept the budget?
Jacob has a hand up.
Oh, Jacob?
Yes. You could actually vote on it, but our additional contributions to Village Laguna, are they limited in any kind of political fair practice sort of restriction?
No.
Well, good.
The only rules that we have that anybody that donates $100 or more must be reported to the FPCC, but you can give however much you want.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we can all remember seeing what the numbers that Liberate Laguna members donate, and those are in the thousands and thousands. So
Yeah.
I don't think we have a concern. Are there any other questions or comments? And so, Meg, would you like to move the motion?
Yes, I move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Hi.
Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, looks like the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mary. I know you and your committee have done a great deal of work on this and tried to really think things through, and we appreciate all of your hard work and your committee's hard work.
You're welcome. And let me just say that, we've had this challenge of raising money without the Charm House tour for the past couple of years now. And the community has really responded. We have gotten the financial support that we've needed. So I think the support is out there. But of course, we'll continue to have the challenge this year again with the election coming up and no Charm House tour.
Yep, it'll be a struggle, but we're going to battle on. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed Susan's presentation as much as I did, although it was depressing. Oh, Barbara Metzger, do you have your hand up, or is that just left?
This is Tony has her hand up.
Oh, Tony, okay.
Yeah. Some of you may know that Subway was approved by the Planning Commission to go downtown in the Catmosphere space in the pink building. And I watched the Planning Commission meeting, and they knew all of the reasons why it wasn't such a good idea, but at the end of the time they approved. And so I can't do an appeal, but I can ask for a review. So I asked for a review, and it was supposed to be up in March 29th, but they withdrew their application. So Subway is no longer going in that space. I'm not sure why they withdrew it, and I need to find out. but I did find out from someone who knows a lot about the restaurants in Laguna that they were greatly relieved that Subway wasn't going in. It wasn't just those of us who are worried about formula base in the downtown. I met with Mark Weiner, and he came from Carmel. They specifically say no formula based food in Carmel, and yet they said that it wasn't the same because they have a couple sandwiches. They're named things like 1,000 Steps, so it wasn't really a Subway. So, but I think we have to be hyper vigilant, and we're really lucky on this one.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
Deborah Lawton, I saw you had your hand up, or did you want to comment? No? Go ahead, Deborah. Unmute yourself, please.
I think she was clapping.
Oh, so hard to tell. Sorry. All right, I thought she had her hand up. And Jacob, you as well? You were clapping or hand up? I don't know. So many symbols. Thank you all. Anybody else for the good of the cause? Thank you for attending. I think this is such an interesting meeting, and I'm glad we learned all this. Hooray for us.
And I noticed that new board member Chris Cramen is here, and he used to work for the city for a long time, and he had a back operation. Maybe he could tell us, give a little intro for people who don't know him.
Oh, please do, Chris. I'd love to hear from you.
I'd be happy to do that. First of all, my apologies for attending late. I had some problems with my Zoom program, but anyway. Yes, my name's Chris Cramen. I've lived in town since 1962, and I worked in city planning and development for about 20 years. At which point I reinvented myself and got into computer programming and installed the city's first computer system, which we use to smooth out and enhance all of the planning functions, including general plan, municipal codes online, things like that. So I've had a varied career, and I've had some history with the city, as you might imagine. And it was a fairly easy task to work for the city for 40 years, because I worked during a time when there was still civil respect, and the job was very interesting, and I met a lot of interesting people. And I think one of my personal greatest accomplishments was being a part of Jim Dilley's vision for the Laguna Greenbelt. I first met him probably in the mid-60s. I walked into his bookshop one day after I got a part-time planning technician job. And when he found out that I was working in the planning department, old Jim ran around the aisles and pulled off about 6 or 8 hardcover bound books about planning, about urban planning. And I told him, I said, Jim, I can't afford books right now. I'm going to school. I'm already paying for books. He said, no, you misunderstand. I'm giving these to you. If you're going to work in planning, you're going to have to read this stuff. And I did. And it seemed to have worked out fairly well. So I think by way of short introduction, I'll leave it at that because I tend to ramble on and on. I noticed that there are quite a few members on the board, which at first kind of stumped me a little bit. But then if you look at all the various neighborhoods in town, and people with their specialties and interests, it doesn't seem that surprising to me anymore. So Verna called me a couple of weeks ago and asked me if I would be willing to join the board. And I told her I'd be honored. I'm happy to be with you, at least so far. And we'll see how it goes. And I hope that I can offer some good historical context and some assistance. I know Verna mentioned one of the things that has to be done is the website is out of date. And I used to create websites. That was about 10 years ago when I retired. So I'm now in my early 70s, but I think I can get that stuff back in my head or bring it to the forefront and do some cleanup on that website, because right now, if I were a stranger to town and I look at the Village Laguna website, we've still got the last election on there. And I think it's very important that we stay current, and I'm very interested in posting current events and keeping that thing alive, interesting, and compelling. So with that,
I see our former Rosemary, who has
yes,
done our website for so many years, and I see her jumping up and down and doing kind of a cheerleading dance.
oh, I see. That's why Rosemary was waving so much.
Yes, look at how excited she is. Wave some flags,
Okay,
tap
all right.
dance.
Very
Thank
good.
you. So we're a little sad to lose Rosemary as our wonderful webmaster, but we're real excited about the fact that you're willing to take it on, and we really appreciate that, Chris.
Oh, of course. It's the least I can do and get started and warmed up.
I
The
think you and
website.
Rosemary-
Can I say I love you, Chris, although I've just met you?
Well, I'll tell
No.
you what, Rosemary, I love you too, because the website, the basic construction of it, I think is excellent. I think there are a few little baubles we can add to make it more interesting without being garish.
And
But
hopefully you get cooperation from people so that they tell you what to put on there, which I had a great deal of trouble extorting.
oh my, well,
But you whipped us into shape. Rosemary, you have been a serious driver of that website, and we appreciate all your work.
well, I won't have to extort. The first thing I do with any group is get some dirt on the individual, so I can
Oh, good.
I can persuade them. That's how I got along with Kyle Butterwick for so many years. So, if any of you remember who Kyle was, so
We remember him.
yeah,
Public domain.
okay.
Used-
Anyway,
used-
happy to be here. I'm just going to be listening probably initially to get a feel for what's going on and who y'all are. I'm really looking forward to when we can actually physically meet for the first time.
Oh, we are too. Thank you so
Oh, yeah.
much, Chris. We
Not
really
at all.
appreciate you.
Thank you very much. I see Jean frowning there. Is it something I said?
No, that's just his face.
Well, that's as usual. Yeah, there you go. That's it. Okay. Anyway, any questions? I'll be happy to answer them. Don't be shy.
How's your back?
The back is getting much better. The operation was 6 months ago. And so I thought I should be in much better condition than I am now. But today, the physical trainer or physical therapy person told me that it's going to take at least a year, which means another 6 months or so, before I get full function back. But it's doing very well compared to how it was months ago.
Oh, good
And
to know.
yeah, I'm able to walk around, do grocery shopping with my wife, Melody Springy, whose father incidentally was, I didn't know it at the time, but was a building official at City Hall. And she and I went grocery shopping. Then I did some tasks at the house. And today my physical therapist told me that I'm doing too much. So I'm on the mend. I'll leave it at that.
I
I'm heading in the
understand
right
that's
direction.
very typical of people who feel better and overdo it. So take it easy, please.
Well, that's my nature.
Everybody's, yep.
Because I'm a German immigrant and I'm stubborn, and I went through the 101st Airborne, and you just don't quit. But when you find out that you hurt yourself constantly, you might have to reconsider that concept. So that's where I am right now. So.
Well, we're
Thank
glad to hear it. We really appreciate you joining the board. We're looking forward to a wonderful relationship.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So am I. So am I. Very good.
And Jacob, do you have your hand up?
Yes, welcome to Chris. I have a question. What work is being done to see about candidates for the election? Time is going to go by, and I wonder if that's not something that might come up for the next meeting or between now and the next meeting, because that's as important as anything, isn't it?
Absolutely. Jacob, our political chair is Meryl Anderson, and we've been working the last 4 or 5 months looking and talking to various people, and we're hoping to be able to bring more information to our general meeting in the near future.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So we're on it. We know. Thank you,
Thank
though,
you.
for reminding everyone.
Thank
Do
you.
you
Thank
have
you,
a
Meryl.
suggestion, Jacob?
Yeah, do you have a suggestion?
You have a suggestion, Jacob?
Oh, good point.
Well, I don't know how valid it is or how interested he would be, but Mr. Anderson seems to be very,
Meryl.
working with the facts and numbers, and he is. I haven't heard him say a swear word once.
Oh.
So he could be an antidote, but I don't know. I don't know if that's come up or not. And I haven't.
He will if he runs. Yeah.
You'll have to learn to swear.
Yeah, it's so important that we have replacements for Peter and even Susan, who has been sort of a pill as mayor. I don't know if you feel the same way, but she. I asked her if she was going to use Robert's rules. She completely ignored the question.
Yep.
And she turned off everyone's mics as opposed to turning off the mic of whoever, someone whose name begins with Peter and ends with Blake. It didn't mute him. And so I don't know, maybe she's just got to get into the rhythm of it. But that was disappointing the last 2 meetings, I thought.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. But I do think we need some, some exciting candidates that I think the fact that they don't cuss, will bring them about 30% of the votes right there. So.
Oh, thank you, Jacob. I hope you'll send any information you have to Meryl, and he'll look into any candidates you think might be valid.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
send
you.
Meryl your suggestions, Jacob.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all. It's been a very good meeting, and I appreciate all your time. Good night. Stay healthy.
Thank
Be
you, Ann.
careful.
We'll do it.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone, and thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Happy Fat Tuesday.
Good night, Karen. Thanks, Meryl. Great meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Ann.
You did a good job. Thank you.